Just got back from Bali a couple of days ago, so I thought I'd share the experience of what it's like at the moment in July 2022. So entering Bali, the immigration point at Bali is a little bit full on. There's a few extra steps, and yes, there is a fairly significant delay getting in. So we went into Bali a couple of years ago and it was pretty much straight through. There wasn't really too much of a wait. However, this time it was about 2.5 hours. Must have been at least one other flight that landed at the same time, so it did hold up the process a fair amount. So if you are landing in Bali, just be mindful that it will take a little bit long. Just be patient to get through the process. So there's a few extra steps they've introduced. When you first get off the plane, the first thing you're going to do is you'll go into a line where they'll ask you for your COVID vaccine certificates. So I've just printed mine off before I left Australia. So we just had to show there that we had the vaccine, and you show your boarding pass and passport with it. Following that, you then need to get a visa. So you now need to do a visa in which you can just get on arrival and pay as you arrive. So again, that's another line. So the visa is about $50 Australian to enter. You can register prior and pay for it prior. But I must admit, I tried that and found that the online process was a little confusing. So I just opted to do the pay on arrival instead. Doesn't take long, and you can pay in Australian currency or whatever currency that you're coming in with. So you don't have to have Indonesian money on you at that stage. After that is your import declaration, which is you're just declaring that you're not importing anything and so on. Again, you can do that one online beforehand, which I did do. That one was quite simple and straightforward. The website was a bit buggy, and a few of our colleagues that we're flying with did report that they couldn't get it to work. Or that they tried and then it broke, and then they had to try it a couple of times and then it worked. So the web page itself is a little bit broken. Apparently it works better on mobiles. That process allows you to do your declaration for imports, which just says that you're not bringing in a certain amount of money, you're not bringing in goods and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end of that process, you can print off a QR code. Now, that's the same as having the little slip that you can then fill out manually. So you can opt to do that again as well. You don't have to do that prior. I did do it prior, and I printed out the QR code, which meant the process was really straightforward. I just had to show the QR code to the system, and then it goes straight through. So that's nice and easy. If not, you're just filling out the card and you're handing it over. Both processes seem to take about the same time. The QR code was slightly faster. Then it is to the immigration line, where you'll then spend a significant amount of time waiting in a line. That took a long time to get through, but they're then looking for, obviously, the visa that you've just purchased, as well as your passport and boarding pass, etc. Once we've got the visa, then we had to find our driver, which was a little bit fun. Lots of stuff going on, pretty busy. Which that then takes us to the next point. Where is Bali at right now as far as busyness? It is pretty busy, but it's certainly nowhere near capacity. So I'd say it's probably about half as busy as what you would imagine it being like in full flight. Pardon the pun. We were staying in Seminyak, and it was pretty reasonably busy. Certainly most places seem to have people in them. Cafes, resorts, all that sort of stuff were pretty busy. And I wouldn't say they're full, but not far off being full. It's probably some of the cheaper places were then, not as full. So, but as far as all the shops and anything around, yes, it is definitely busy, and there is a lot of tourists around. But it's probably a nice time because it's not too busy. It's not chaotic and out of control. Now, as far as shopping, most places are open, so a lot of the stores and so on that you see on the side of the road are all pretty open, and they've got pretty much everything that you usually expect. So yes, you can buy your Bing Tang t-shirt and fake watches, but we did find that they are fairly desperate, as far as wanting to sell you something, which is unsurprising. They haven't had tourists there for about 2 years, so be prepared to be chased down the street, be harassed, and be sort of, demanded to buy something. They are pretty desperate to sell you something because they need to make some money. So probably not the greatest variety. I remember there being a lot greater variety of stuff. I did find that pretty much every shop had the exact same stuff in it. Same t-shirts, same hats, same watches, same everything. And once you had seen one shop, you'd really seen them all. They're all selling the exact same stuff. There's no variety anymore. What there used to be is a lot less crafty style stuff. Wood you can't take back home anyway, so a lot of those shops have kind of disappeared. While you're around the shops, particularly in Kuta area and so on, be mindful that there are 3 sort of disease threats at the moment. Of course, there's COVID, which has been around for the last couple of years. There's monkeypox and there is foot and mouth are currently 3 areas of concern at the moment. So as far as COVID goes, we were with a large group of about 40 people, and at least a couple of those people did catch COVID. So there's a possibility of catching it while you're there, probably no more than you would at home. As far as the mandates, masks are required, in the airport, public transport and so on. We wore them in the cabs and stuff like that, but most of the other time, pretty much no one's wearing a mask. So there's places like in busy streets and stuff like that where people aren't wearing a mask. That's probably your highest risk point. So that's something to think about. As far as monkeypox, I've heard it mentioned, but I really didn't see any, definition of it. I didn't see anyone talking about it. I didn't see anything that we'd know. Of course, it's a disease. You're not going to see it anyway. So there was no one on our teams caught it that we know of, and so we didn't really see it as such. Foot and mouth, again, same deal. We didn't really see any of it. Of course, you're not really going to see it anyway. We didn't go into regions where farms and stuff like that, so we stayed within Seminyak and sort of that region, Nusa Dua and so on. So we didn't really go into the real regional areas. We did sort of venture outside of the city as such, but city's a loose word. But we didn't really see any impact of it. However, when we got home, that's where we only really had to do anything different. I'll go into that in more detail coming back into Sydney in a second. Now, the resorts, we did visit a couple of resorts, Potato Head, W Resort, and so on, a couple of other big ones we just happened to do little, afternoon trips to. They're pretty busy and they're definitely up and running. They're probably not quite at capacity, but not far off it. They were probably the more busy places that we visited. So they seem to be A, fully up and running, and B, reasonably full. So that was pretty busy. The other one I dropped into, I did a day pass down at Club Med, which I'm a big fan of, and we'd been there about 5 years ago, so I did a quick little day pass down to Club Med, and it seemed to be a lot less busier than the ones that were up in Seminyak. So it seemed to be probably less than half capacity, and that's just me judging by what it was like in 2017 versus what was like on that particular day that I was there. It didn't seem anywhere near full. So, but everything's fresh, everything's new, and it's ready to roll. So it is fully up and running. It's just not at capacity, which is probably a good time to go. Now, last but not least, getting back into Sydney. So a couple of things to be mindful of. One, the foot and mouth thing is a very visible thing that they're talking about. The only thing that we needed to do when we arrived back in Sydney was that we had to walk on these special mats, which was just basically once you came out of the gate and into the actual terminal, they just had these floor mats down on the floor and you just walked over them. That's pretty much it. The only then difference was when we went through immigration and security, they then were much more thorough on checking bags. So we had gone through a couple of weeks ago coming back from Phuket, and it was pretty much straight through, whereas this time, particularly coming in from Bali in Indonesia, we had to declare that obviously that's where we were coming from. And they did an x-ray of the bags, and then they asked about the shoes, and I had basically said that I had cleaned them, which I had, and they then allowed me to go through. So just before you leave Bali, just give your shoes a real thorough clean and you've got nothing to worry about. A little bit slower getting out just on the fact that they're checking everyone's bags on that particular flight coming in from Bali. That is pretty much it as far as everything else, scooter hire, all that sort of stuff. It's all kind of back to normal. Everything that you would expect to be there is up and running. And we had an absolutely amazing and fabulous time. So if you're thinking about going, I would highly recommend going. The only thing you need to factor in is that little bit more time to get through immigration on both the Bali end and the Sydney or Australia end, depending on which state you're coming from. Other than that, go for it. Get in there. I'm sure the Balinese would really appreciate any money that we're spending in their region. As tourists, it's a massive tourist industry there. So, and it has been obviously suffering through COVID. So if you're thinking about going to Bali, then I would highly recommend to do it and give some money back to the Balinese and get that industry up and running again. I hope that helps. If it does, give us a like and subscribe and all the other stuff like that. And I'll see you next time.